Have you ever loved someone deeply, but the timing was completely wrong? Today, you'll follow Maya and Daniel, Aisha and Liam, Tara and Jonah. Three couples who cared for each other more than they ever admitted out loud. Yet each of them faced a moment where love stood still, and life kept moving. Three couples. Three real stories. One painful truth: sometimes love isn't enough. We grow at different speeds. We heal at different times. And sometimes, two people who love each other simply don't align. In today's video, you'll hear three real stories. Stories where love was present, strong, and sincere. But life moved in ways the heart couldn't keep up with. These aren't tales of betrayal or cruelty. They're moments where timing stepped in and changed everything. Moments where two people wanted the same ending, but couldn't reach it at the same moment. We'll begin with Maya and Daniel, a couple who believed they could balance ambition and affection until life demanded a choice. Then we'll meet Aisha and Liam, two souls drawn to each other, even as one of them was still learning how to trust again. And finally, Tara and Jonah, partners who built years of memories together yet stood on opposite sides of what came next. Three stories. Three different paths. One shared lesson: timing shapes love more than we admit. As you listen, think about your own experiences. Has timing ever betrayed you? Chapter 1. The Dreamer and the Planner. Maya was 27, driven, and standing at the edge of the biggest opportunity of her life. Years of sacrifice had led her here: late nights at the office, projects no one else wanted, and the quiet determination to prove she could rise in a world that often underestimated her. Now, the doors she had been knocking on were finally opening. Daniel was 29. Steady. Grounded. The kind of man who believed in building a life brick by brick, not rushing, not gambling, but choosing carefully. He loved Maya with a certainty that never wavered. To him, their relationship was not just passion. It was the foundation of the future he envisioned: marriage, a home, and eventually, a family. When they were together, everything felt effortless. Their conversations stretched late into the night, their laughter filled quiet rooms, and their friends often said, "You two are perfect together." And for a time, it seemed undeniable. They were aligned in love, in values, in the way they looked at each other and saw possibility. But life doesn't always move at the same pace for two people. Sometimes, one path accelerates while the other waits. And the distance that forms isn't loud or obvious. It creeps in slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize you're standing on opposite sides of a choice neither of you expected to make. For Maya and Daniel, that quiet shift began the moment her career demanded more than she ever thought possible, and more than Daniel ever imagined he'd have to compete with. Maya's promotion came with a new title, a bigger office, and responsibilities that stretched far beyond the usual 9 to 5. Meetings ran late. Deadlines tightened. Her phone buzzed long after midnight. It was everything she had worked for, and everything Daniel had quietly feared. At first, he tried to adjust. He told himself it was temporary, that once the initial pressure settled, they'd find their rhythm again. But days turned into weeks, and the space between them grew in ways neither of them addressed directly. Daniel planned a dinner with his parents, hoping Maya could join. It wasn't a special occasion, just a simple evening he thought might bring them closer. But an urgent project kept her at the office. She apologized, promised she'd make it up to him, and rushed back to her desk before he could say much more. He understood, or at least he tried to. But on the drive home, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was becoming an afterthought in a life he used to feel central to. Meanwhile, Maya felt the pressure from every direction. She wanted to be present for Daniel, but she also knew opportunities like this didn't come twice. She told herself he would understand, that love meant supporting each other's dreams. Still, a quiet worry lingered in her chest each time she saw the disappointment in his eyes. Then came the moment Daniel almost proposed. He had the ring. He had rehearsed the words. But as he watched Maya rush out the door for yet another late meeting, he slipped the box back into his pocket. Something inside him hesitated, Not because he doubted his love for her, but because he wasn't sure she had room for the life he wanted to build. And that hesitation, that single pause, marked the beginning of a distance neither of them fully acknowledged, but both of them felt. Daniel didn't plan to propose that night. He had imagined something warm, something thoughtful, something that felt like them. But after weeks of feeling the distance grow, he convinced himself that maybe a commitment, a clear step forward, would bring them back to the center. He invited Maya over for a quiet dinner. Nothing extravagant. Just the two of them, the way it used to be. He cooked her favorite meal, set the table, and placed the small ring box in his pocket. He kept touching it without realizing, as if making sure it was still there. Maya arrived late, exhausted, her mind still tangled in unfinished tasks and unread emails. She apologized, hugged him quickly, and tried to shake off the weight of her day. Daniel smiled, but something in his eyes revealed how long he had been waiting. They sat together, talking in short bursts, both trying to bridge a gap neither of them fully understood. And then, in a moment that felt both sudden and overdue, Daniel stood up, took a breath, and reached for the ring. Maya froze. Not because she didn't love him, she did. But the timing hit her like a wall. Her career was demanding everything. Her future felt uncertain. And the life Daniel was offering, she wasn't ready to step into it. She whispered his name, her voice trembling. Daniel saw the hesitation before she said a single word. He closed the ring box slowly, his hands shaking just enough for her to notice. In that quiet moment, they both understood something neither wanted to admit. Love was present, but their lives were moving in different directions. And no amount of affection could force their timelines to meet. That night didn't end with anger or raised voices. It ended with two people sitting across from each other, realizing that the future they imagined together no longer matched the reality they were living. The days after the proposal felt unusually quiet. Maya tried to explain what she felt, that her hesitation wasn't a rejection of Daniel, but a reflection of where her life was at that moment. She wanted to be honest, even if the truth was uncomfortable. Daniel listened, and though he tried to stay composed, the weight of her words settled heavily on him. He had imagined a future with her so clearly that stepping back from it felt like losing something he had already begun to build in his heart. They met at a small park near Maya's apartment, a place they often visited when they needed clarity. The air was still, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. They just sat together, knowing what was coming. Maya finally said what had been lingering between them. She wasn't ready for the life Daniel was prepared to start. She loved him, but she couldn't promise a timeline she didn't believe in. Daniel nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the ground, trying to steady himself. There was no anger, no accusations. Just two people acknowledging that love alone couldn't bridge the gap between where they were and where they needed to be. They held each other for a long moment, both wishing the timing had been kinder. When they finally let go, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost gentle. A goodbye shaped not by lack of love, but by the realization that forcing a future neither was ready for would only hurt them more. And as they walked away in opposite directions, both of them carried the same thought. If life had aligned differently, their story might have ended another way. Maya and Daniel didn't lose each other because the love faded. They lost each other because their lives were moving at different speeds. One was stepping into a future she had worked years to reach. The other was ready to build a future he had been dreaming of for just as long. Neither of them was wrong. Neither of them failed. They simply reached a point where their timelines no longer matched. And when that happens, even the strongest connection can feel like it's slipping through your fingers. Their story reminds us of something many people learn the hard way. Love needs space to grow, but it also needs alignment. When two hearts want different things at the same moment, affection alone can't hold everything together. Some relationships end with anger. Others end with silence. But the ones like Maya and Daniel's, they end with understanding. A quiet acceptance that sometimes the right person arrives at the wrong time. As you think about their journey, ask yourself, Has timing ever shaped the outcome of a relationship in your life? Chapter 2. The one who was still healing. Aisha was 28, thoughtful, steady, and known by everyone around her as the kind of person who listened with her whole heart. She wasn't searching for perfection. She just wanted a connection built on honesty and emotional safety. Liam was 31. Kind, intelligent, and carrying the quiet weight of a divorce that had left deeper marks than he liked to admit. He had moved on in the practical sense, new apartment, new routines, but emotionally he was still sorting through pieces of a life that had once felt permanent. When Aisha and Liam met, the connection was immediate. Their conversations flowed easily, their humor matched, and their comfort with each other felt natural from the very beginning. Friends noticed how they looked at each other, as if they had known one another far longer than they actually had. But beneath Liam's warmth was a hesitation he couldn't fully hide. He wanted to let Aisha in, yet something inside him held back. Aisha sensed it, but she believed patience could bridge the gap. She told herself that everyone carries something from their past, and that maybe all he needed was time. What neither of them realized was how much that unspoken struggle would shape the path ahead. Because when someone is still healing, even the strongest connection can feel fragile. In the beginning, Aisha didn't mind the small pauses in Liam's behavior. The moments when he grew quiet after a deep conversation, or when he changed the subject whenever emotions got too close. She told herself it was part of getting to know someone who had been hurt before. But as their connection deepened, those pauses became more frequent. Aisha would open up about her day, her dreams, her fears, and Liam would listen, but something in his expression suggested he was holding back far more than he shared. There were evenings when they laughed effortlessly, when everything felt light and promising. And then, without warning, Liam would retreat into himself. Aisha noticed how he tensed at small misunderstandings, how he hesitated before answering simple questions like, "Are you okay?" She tried to be patient. She reminded herself that healing isn't linear. But patience becomes heavier when you're unsure what you're waiting for. One night, after a minor disagreement, nothing more than a miscommunication, Liam didn't respond to her messages. Hours passed. Then a full day. Aisha sat on her couch, staring at her phone, wondering if she had said something wrong, or if he was fighting a battle she couldn't see. When he finally reached out, his apology was sincere, but vague. He said he needed space. He said he didn't want to hurt her. He said he wasn't sure how to explain what he was feeling. Aisha listened, but a quiet worry settled in her chest. She cared for him deeply, yet she could feel the weight of his past pressing into their present. And she began to wonder how long she could carry both her emotions and his unspoken fears. Liam wanted to move forward. Aisha wanted to understand him. But the distance created by his unresolved pain was beginning to shape their relationship in ways neither of them intended. Aisha reached a point where the silence between them felt heavier than any argument they could have had. She cared for Liam deeply, but she could no longer ignore the feeling that she was loving someone who kept one foot in a world she couldn't enter. One evening, she asked him to meet her at a quiet cafe they both liked. It wasn't a dramatic setting, just a small table by the window, the kind they had shared countless times before. But the moment Liam sat down, he sensed something different in her expression. She wasn't angry. She wasn't distant. She was simply tired. Aisha spoke gently, choosing her words with care. She told him she felt close to him, yet far from him at the same time. She told him she wanted to understand him, but she couldn't keep guessing what he was feeling. And then she said the words she had been holding back for weeks. "Liam, I'm giving you my heart at full strength, but you're still protecting yours." Liam looked down, his hands tightening around his cup. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to explain it away. Instead, he admitted something he had been avoiding even in his own thoughts, that he was still carrying the weight of his past, and no matter how much he wanted to move forward, part of him was afraid of being hurt again. He told Aisha he admired her patience, her kindness, her willingness to stay even when things felt uncertain. But he also confessed that he didn't know how long it would take for him to fully trust himself again, let alone someone else. In that moment, Aisha realized something painful. She couldn't heal him. She could support him, she could care for him, but she couldn't rebuild the parts of him that were still recovering from a life he had left behind. The truth was finally spoken, and once it was out in the open, neither of them could pretend the relationship was moving forward the way they hoped. After their conversation at the cafe, Aisha and Liam walked outside together. The evening air was cool, and the street was quiet, but the silence between them carried a truth they could no longer avoid. Aisha cared for him deeply, but she knew she couldn't keep giving more than he was able to receive. She had tried to be patient, tried to understand, tried to hold space for both of them, but she could feel herself slowly losing the parts of her that needed stability and reassurance. Liam stood beside her, struggling with his own conflict. He wanted to be the man she deserved. He wanted to show up fully, without hesitation. But he also knew he wasn't ready. His heart was still tangled in memories he hadn't fully processed, and he didn't want to pull Aisha into a place she didn't belong. They found a bench nearby and sat down. No raised voices. No blame. Just two people acknowledging the reality neither wanted to face. Aisha told him she valued what they had, but she couldn't keep walking a path filled with uncertainty. Liam nodded, his voice low as he admitted he didn't want to hold her back. It wasn't a dramatic ending. It was quiet, almost gentle, the kind of goodbye that comes from understanding rather than anger. Aisha wished him healing. Liam wished her happiness. And though they both felt the ache of what could have been, they knew this was the kindest choice they could make for each other. As they parted ways, Aisha felt a mix of sadness and relief. Liam watched her leave, knowing she had given him more patience than he had given himself. Their story didn't end because they lacked love. It ended because one heart was ready, and the other was still learning how to trust again. Aisha and Liam's story didn't end because they lacked connection. It ended because one heart was ready to build something new, while the other was still trying to understand the pieces left behind. Love can feel strong, steady, and full of promise, but when someone is still healing, even the smallest step forward can feel overwhelming. Aisha offered patience, understanding, and consistency. Liam offered honesty, but honesty alone couldn't close the distance created by his past. Their goodbye teaches us something many people learn only after giving their all. You can care for someone deeply, but you cannot carry their healing for them. You cannot rush someone into readiness. And you cannot build a future with a person who is still trying to rebuild themselves. Some relationships end with conflict. Others end with silence. But endings like theirs come from clarity, the realization that love needs more than emotion. It needs stability. It needs presence. It needs two hearts moving forward at the same pace. As you reflect on their journey, ask yourself, have you ever loved someone who wasn't ready for the same future you were? Chapter 3. Almost forever. Tara was 33, thoughtful, steady, and clear about what she wanted from life. She wasn't chasing perfection or fantasy, she simply longed for a partner who was ready to build a future with her. After years of growth, self-reflection, and hard lessons, she felt prepared for the next chapter: marriage, a home, and the kind of stability she had worked hard to create. Jonah was 35. Warm, affectionate, and deeply connected to Tara. Their relationship had lasted 4 years, long enough to build routines, memories, and a sense of comfort that felt almost like home. To anyone watching from the outside, they looked like a couple on the brink of forever. But beneath that closeness was a hesitation Jonah rarely spoke about. He loved Tara, but the idea of long-term commitment made him pause in ways he didn't fully understand. He wasn't unsure about her, he was unsure about himself. And that uncertainty lingered quietly, showing up in small moments he hoped she wouldn't notice. Taft, however, did notice. She saw the way he changed the subject whenever marriage came up. She felt the shift in his tone when friends announced engagements. She sensed the distance in his silence whenever she talked about the future. They loved each other deeply, but they were standing at different points in their lives. Tara was ready to move forward. Jonah was still trying to understand why he couldn't take the next step. And though neither of them said it out loud, the tension between readiness and hesitation was slowly shaping the path ahead. As the months passed, Tara felt the quiet pressure of time more sharply. She wasn't rushing out of fear, she simply knew what she wanted, and she believed 4 years together had given them enough clarity to take the next step. She imagined a home they could build, traditions they could create, and a future shaped by shared intention. Jonah loved her deeply, but every time the conversation drifted toward commitment, something inside him tightened. He didn't pull away physically, he still held her close, still laughed with her, still made plans for weekends and holidays. But when Tara spoke about long-term decisions, his responses grew shorter, softer, and less certain. Tara noticed the shift. She noticed how he hesitated before answering questions about the future. She noticed how he changed the subject when friends announced engagements. She noticed the way he grew quiet whenever she mentioned wanting a family someday. She tried to be patient. She reminded herself that everyone moves at their own pace. But patience becomes heavier when you're unsure whether the person you love is moving at all. One evening, after attending a friend's wedding, Tara and Jonah walked to their car in silence. The ceremony had been beautiful, heartfelt vows, joyful families, a room full of hope. Tara felt inspired. Jonah felt overwhelmed. In the car, Tara gently asked him what he saw for them in the next few years. Jonah stared ahead, searching for words he didn't have. He told her he loved her. He told her she meant everything to him. But when she asked if he was ready for the next step, he couldn't give her an answer. That moment lingered between them long after the conversation ended. Tara felt the ache of uncertainty. Jonah felt the weight of expectations he wasn't sure he could meet. And slowly, the space between readiness and hesitation began to shape their days, in ways neither of them wanted to admit. Tara reached a point where waiting no longer felt hopeful. It felt uncertain. She loved Jonah deeply, but she could no longer ignore the quiet ache that came from standing still while her heart was ready to move forward. One evening, she invited Jonah over. No special occasion, no celebration, just a simple dinner at her apartment. She wanted a calm space, a moment where they could speak honestly without distractions. Jonah arrived with his usual warmth, unaware of the conversation she had been rehearsing in her mind for days. They sat together on the couch, the room softly lit, the atmosphere familiar yet heavy. Tara took a breath and told him she needed clarity. She told him she wasn't asking for perfection or immediate answers. She just needed to know whether they were walking toward the same future. Jonah listened, his expression shifting as her words settled in. He loved her. He knew that. But when she asked him directly if he was ready for the next step, he hesitated. Not for a moment, but long enough for Tara to understand the truth he had been avoiding. He admitted he didn't know why he couldn't take that step. He said he cared for her more than anyone he had ever been with. But when he pictured marriage, commitment, and the life she wanted, something inside him stalled. He couldn't explain it clearly, only that he wasn't ready, and he didn't know when he would be. Tara felt her chest tighten. She had hoped for reassurance, for a sign that he was close to the same place she was. Instead, she heard uncertainty, the kind that doesn't fade with time, the kind that lingers until someone finally acknowledges it. In that moment, both of them realized they were standing at a crossroads. Tara wanted a future she could step into with confidence. Jonah wanted more time, though he couldn't say how much. And the distance between those two truths was wider than either of them had admitted before. Tara sat quietly after Jonah's confession, letting his words settle. She wasn't surprised, not entirely. She had felt this uncertainty for months. But hearing it spoken aloud made everything clearer than it had ever been. She looked at him with a softness that came from love, not disappointment. She told him she appreciated his honesty and that she knew he cared for her deeply. But she also said something she had been holding inside for far too long, that she couldn't keep waiting for a future he wasn't sure he wanted. Jonah's expression shifted. He reached for her hand, as if holding it could slow down the moment. He told her he didn't want to lose her. He told her he just needed more time. But Tara had heard those words before, and each time they carried the same uncertainty. She explained that wanting more time wasn't the problem. It was not knowing how much time, or whether it would ever lead to the life she hoped for. She wasn't asking him to rush. She wasn't asking him to change. She was simply choosing not to put her dreams on hold indefinitely. Jonah felt the weight of her decision. He knew she wasn't leaving because she stopped loving him. She was leaving because she finally accepted that love alone couldn't guarantee the future she wanted. They held each other for a long moment, both aware that this was the end of a chapter they had written together over 4 years. No anger. No accusations. Just two hearts acknowledging that they were no longer moving in the same direction. When Tara walked him to the door, Jonah paused, hoping she might change her mind. But the look in her eyes told him everything. She was choosing herself, her future, and the clarity she had earned. And as the door closed gently behind him, both of them understood that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones made out of love, not the absence of it. Tara and Jonah's story reminds us that love can feel steady, familiar, and deeply comforting, yet still fall short of the future two people hope to build. Their connection was real. Their affection was genuine. But readiness is its own kind of commitment, one that can't be borrowed, rushed, or promised without certainty. Tara wasn't asking for perfection. She wasn't asking for guarantees. She was simply asking for a shared direction. And Jonah, despite loving her, couldn't offer that. Not because he didn't care, but because he wasn't prepared to step into the life she was ready to create. Their goodbye teaches a difficult truth. Love can bring two people together, but shared timing is what allows them to stay together. When one person is ready to build a future and the other is still searching for clarity, the distance between them grows quietly until it becomes impossible to ignore. Some relationships end because of conflict. Others end because of change. But endings like Tara and Jonah's happen when two hearts want different things at the same moment, and neither wants to hold the other back. As you reflect on their journey, consider this. Have you ever cared for someone deeply, yet realized you were standing at different points in life? Maya and Daniel, Aisha and Liam, Tara and Jonah. 3 couples who cared deeply, who tried sincerely, who wanted their stories to last. And yet, each of them reached a moment where love alone couldn't guide the path forward. Their journeys remind us that timing shapes relationships in ways we often overlook. 2 people can share affection, chemistry, and genuine intention, but if their lives are moving at different speeds, the connection begins to strain. Not because the love is weak, but because the alignment is missing. Some hearts are ready to build. Others are still healing. Some are prepared to commit. Others are searching for clarity. And when those differences appear, they don't always announce themselves loudly. They show up quietly, in hesitation, in uncertainty, in the moments when one person steps forward and the other stays still. These stories teach us that timing isn't just a detail, it's a foundation. It determines whether two people grow together or grow apart. It decides whether love becomes a shared future or a meaningful memory. And perhaps the hardest truth of all is this: you can meet the right person at the wrong time, and the outcome will still change your life. Not because the love wasn't real, but because the moment wasn't right. If these stories made you pause, if they reminded you of someone you once cared for, or if they helped you understand a chapter of your own life a little more clearly, then I hope you'll stay with this channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might be the reminder someone else needs now. And if these lessons spoke to you, consider subscribing. There are more stories ahead, stories about love, timing, growth, and the choices that shape who we become. Thank you for watching.